Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Apologies, I know it's super echoey. I can hear it when I'm talking. I'm still on the road. I know I said New York was my last trip, but turns out one more. I'm in Northern California. This really, truly is the last one. And then we'll be back. So it is good to be back with Rocky. I know he flew solo last week. I flew solo the week before. So it's great that we're together to do this. I did read the books last week, even though I didn't get a chance to really chat about them. I'll give a quick rundown right now. I thought Duo number one, the milestone debut, was interesting. Interesting concept. Greg Pak's always a writer who I enjoy, so I thought that was pretty cool. Flash blew it out of the park. I mean, Jeremy Adams continues to kill it in that book. Linda Park having powers is just so cool. And finally getting back to that Iron Heights mystery that's been teased for a long time, all the way back in Williamson's run, is pretty cool. Batman Superman World's Finest just continues to be a whole lot of fun. What Mark Waid is doing, breakneck pace. I do wish he'd slow down just a little bit, but it's a minor nitpick. Wonder Woman Evolution. We're finally figuring out what evolution means in that title, right? Whole idea of nanites and evolving the human race. Batman the Night 5 was a little underwhelming. It's still really good. But interesting to see where Bruce learned his technique for, disguises. So that was cool. Catwoman 43, probably on the low end for me. I really didn't care for the Bengal art. It was fun to see Catwoman pulled into Harley's world in terms of the roller derby stuff. And we got the Red Claw, who's a comic book, DC comic book debut. She's from Batman animated series. So that was interesting. I bought a couple copies on spec. But yeah, the art kind of. Shadow Warzone number one. I don't know about this book. So I bought like 5 copies. I pre-ordered like 5 copies of that X-Men homage cover because it just looked amazing. But when I read the book, it was a little underwhelming. Like I don't know that we needed an anthology tying into the Shadow War because it's not that big of a thing. But it was okay. Nightwing number 92. So this was the one out of all of them that I really wanted to be on and talk to Rocky about because we both have talked about how slow going Nightwing has been, but we appreciate what Tom Taylor's doing in terms of like emotion and character moments. We didn't get that much emotion and character moments in this one, but it was like breakneck pace and a lot happened. So I really enjoyed that. Then the other 3, we haven't been reading the Earth Prime stuff because neither Rocky or I watch the CW shows. Looney Tunes we never cover, and then Fables. I'm not a fan of Fables. Like I've never read it, so I didn't even check that one out. But yeah, all in all, I thought it was a solid week, and I think probably a tie between Duo number one, which really impressed me, and that Flash issue. And if I had to pick one, probably that Flash issue really blew it out of the park. So all in all, a pretty strong week. This week we have 9 titles, I believe. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, 7, 8, 9. Pretty solid week. I thought probably DC Vampires was the weakest for me because it's almost like a what if sort of story. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. Hard to pick a favorite. I thought Detective Comics was really strong. So was Task Force Z. So yeah, Batman Beyond was good. So yeah, pretty strong week this week. Rocky, what'd you think?
Yeah, I enjoyed this week. This week was pretty darn good. I was Batman Fortress is a pleasant surprise. I wasn't expecting much from that because I guess I get Batman fatigue, and just when I think I'm a little bit tired of Batman, a writer comes along, and it's a new writer for me on the Batman Fortress, and I actually kind of like the premise. And we'll be discussing that. I like Batman Beyond White Knight. Sean Gordon Murphy continues to impress. Action Comics PKJ is doing a great job on that. And I really like what's happening between and Deathstroke and Robin with a tie-in to World's Finest by Mark Waid, which was a surprise, which we'll be talking about. So with the Demon Nezha making obviously what's happening in World's Finest by Mark Waid, his storyline is connected to Robin and Deathstroke, which is a
Yeah,
surprise,
yeah, big
but
surprise.
a pleasant one.
Um, Yeah, definitely. I love it when it ties in organically like that. I will admit to reading ahead, like when I finished reading Shadow Warzone, then I immediately read Robin. And then instead of reading more of the books for this week, because what did I read first? I can't even remember at this point. But anyway, I think Aquaman. Actually, I think I read Deathstroke first,
Yeah.
and then I read Aquaman, and then I read Robin, and then I went to future weeks and I finished the last two parts of the Shadow War because I just had to know who it was, and we'll be
Well,
talking about it.
well, it was very, very predictable, though. I mean, well, you even called it. We called it, didn't we?
Yeah,
I mean, it was
yeah,
fairly predictable. It was surprising that Batman. I think Williamson actually. We'll talk about it, but Williamson kind of made Batman look like an idiot. Batman. I'm sure. I'm surprised he didn't figure it out immediately because we did.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. We did, but we won't spoil it here, even though we
yeah.
do spoilers. We won't spoil it here because it's still a couple weeks away. But if you go back and listen, if you go back and listen to subsequent or previous, I should say, previous episodes, you'll figure it out. But
Well, it's
anyway,
spoiled in Robin. We'll spoil. We're not. You don't want to spoil it in Robin.
well, yeah, when we get to Robin, the last page reveal, yeah, we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll keep you in suspense for a little while longer while we talk about Shadow War Part 6, which is Deathstroke Incorporated #9, written by Joshua Williamson. Art is by Paolo Pantalina. Colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Steve Wands. It had been a little bit since we actually had any of the regular story. So I admit having to go back and rereading Batman 123 to remember, wait, so where are Bruce and Damian? Oh, they're in Central City at this costumer place, this guy that makes costumes for villains. Oh, that's right. They went to I think they went to Blackgate, and I think it was Black. Yeah, because they were in Gotham. Yeah, they went to Blackgate. They found one of the guys who had been dressed up as a Deathstroke, who was showed up in the Bendis run. Which again, kudos to Williamson for tying that stuff in. Found out that there was this other guy that was there, who was much more serious, that was getting a Deathstroke costume as well, and so that's where Batman and Robin are when this issue starts. But more importantly, kind of the emotional beat of this issue. We saw at the end of last issue that Respawn was killed. And you kind of thought, well, he is a bit of a throwaway character, but he had potential. So will they keep him dead, or will, Lazarus Pit is a possibility. We've seen Slade Wilson heal from things. We know Respawn himself has the ability to regenerate, and he was on Lazarus Island and was resurrected before. So, but based on the beats of this issue, it seems like he's going to be gone for good. And Deathstroke is, I guess we'll just say, he's not taking it well. Meanwhile, Batman and Robin, they are at that location, the costumer, and they do find the Deathstroke imposter there, but he escapes basically by tunneling through the ground after causing an earthquake. And again, hint, hint, hint on who this guy might be. If you're a longtime DC fan, you can probably figure it out. And then we also see Deathstroke go and recruit members, or rescue is not the right word, because Ghostmaker's been protecting all the members of the Secret Society that have a hit out on them from the League of Shadows. But Deathstroke goes over there to Ghostmaker and is like, all right, they're coming with me because now that Respawn is dead, Slade's pissed off and he's going to take the fight to Talia. So it's a pretty fast-paced issue. I basically just covered everything that happened. I'm not the biggest fan of Paolo Pantalina's art on superhero stuff. I think his stuff works for fantasy a lot better. Like, I think the first time I ever saw his work was over at Aspen Comics on Journey, and she's like a djinn, and I think his art works really well there. Not to say the art is bad, the storytelling is pretty good. He just has really thick lines, and I don't know that it suits a kind of a kinetic superhero book as well as some other art styles do. But all in all, it's solid. And like I said, like once I finish reading this, I'm like, okay, I got to read Robin, and I got to read Shadow War Omega because I want to know for sure if I was right. And turns out I was. But pretty solid. And all in all, I think, and we'll talk about it more when we talk about Shadow War Omega, I think that this, even though it's a smaller story, and Williamson said as much, it accomplishes a lot, but it also leaves a lot of open-ended questions, which you can almost say that about any DC book these days. So everything bowing to Dark Crisis in a way, right? Leave everything open. Dark Crisis will answer questions, also pose more questions, and lead into the next era of DC is what it feels like. So, and even at the end of Shadow War, it literally says to be continued in Dark Crisis. So, what do you think of this one, Rock?
Yeah, this was action packed. A lot happens in this issue that it's just adrenaline, a total adrenaline rush. I mean, there's nonstop action. Slade wants to kill Talia. He Slade Wilson, the real Slade Wilson. He wants to take out Talia because he knows that Talia screwed up. That he's not the one who tried to kill. He knows he's not guilty of killing Roz, and he knows that somebody is setting up him and Talia and wants him and Talia to face off against each other, and he'll have. But he still wants to kill Talia because her League of Assassins killed Respawn, and he's just starting to get he just finally got another son into his life, and he felt it was maybe his way to try to redeem himself, and so him losing Respawn absolutely devastates him. He does his best. He asks the crime doctor to see if he can resurrect or help Respawn out, but Respawn, of course, has got riddled with bullet holes. He's as dead as a doornail, and I'm sure even Lazarus Resin couldn't revive him. And it is what it is. There's a reference here that Talia at one point, Talia does tell Mother Soul that Roz is dead, that her son is dead, and Mother Soul talks about the Nizha will rise and that the prophecies are going to come true then, that if Roz is dead, then the prophecy has begun. So what's this prophecies everyone is talking about? Well, that's some hint here of future issues as well. So, yeah, this is good. Now, lots of hints. Anyone who knows anything about Batman, I think any longtime DC reader, even a short-time DC reader, if you're a fan of Batman, of a particular Batman group, you're going to know who the fake Deathstroke is. If you know anything about Leviathan, what Leviathan did, what Talia did to a country called Markovia, you could probably figure it out. But we'll get to it when we review Robin later on in the review here. But it's a good issue. Yeah.
Yeah, even if you're on the outside looking in, you should be able to figure out who it is. Anyway, let's move on. This has been somewhat of an inconsistent series, but it's Aquaman number 4. It's written by Chuck Brown and Brandon Thomas. Pencils are by Sammy Bosri. Inks by Bosri and Vicente Cifuentes. Colors by Adriano Lucas and letters by Anroll Design. We pretty much have it all laid out here for us, what's going on in the series. So what do you think, Rock?
I'm not, I don't know. I haven't really been a huge fan of this series so far. And I think the last time I reviewed this, the last time Aquaman 3, I think you reviewed it by yourself. I wasn't really, I wasn't with you when you reviewed it, the third issue, but it feels a little bit wonky to me. It feels like it's a little bit kind of all over the place. I don't really find myself being pulled into this story, and I don't know. This Chuck Brown and Brandon Thomas. I don't know. I feel like Aquaman is being as handled like the Amazons are. It's just not really resonating with me. Although Aquaman is better handled than the Wonder Woman mythology is as of late, and we know that there's sleeper agents. We now have some understanding what Arthur Curry was doing on Mars. He was trying to track the sleeper agents that are all planted all over the world. These are Zebellian rebels that want to destroy the UN and create terrorism all over the world, and I think maybe blame Atlantis for it, to get Atlantis in trouble and to destroy their relationship with the United Nations. And so that's going on the larger playing field, and so I guess I can get that. I'm there's some decent enough character work here, but I feel it's been very disjointed. I think Jackson Hyde has been angry one minute, and he's he's getting along with his father Black Manta the next. Then he's angry again. I feel like it's been a little bit disjointed, but it's starting to come into its own a little bit. I feel uh, there's a lot of moving parts here. Batwoman out of the blue making appearance in this issue really felt out of the blue. I don't know why Batwoman would be a character to be used here, but I guess that's all well and good. It seems like a very kind of odd choice, but it's funny. It's not even that it's not a bad story. It's not bad. I just, for some reason, maybe it's because it's not really being hyped or advertised, but it just feels so, all the plot twists are just kind of out of nowhere. It feels I've I haven't really been able to get into this, and like I said, it's better written than Trial of the Amazons. I feel like Aquaman is an event, even though it kind of isn't. I guess it's a series, but it feels like it's meant to be an event of some kind, and but it's not really resonating with me. But I can't say it's necessarily like a bad story. It's just something I don't really find compelling. I think there's too many characters in it, to be honest. It's all the characters coming together, they don't come together as well as I would like. But I will give Chuck Brown and Brandon Thomas some credit, because they are making this a big deal. This involves the entire world. This involves Zebel, terrorism all over the world. They're thinking big here, and I like that aspect of it. And maybe I just got to reread it again once, read the first 4 issues again coming into this fourth issue to really appreciate it. But it's not quite hitting with me. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, something you said there is exactly what I was going to say. Why I feel like it's not working. There's too many characters, and as much as DC wants Aquaman to be kind of an A-lister, he just isn't. He's a B-lister. He's a support guy. The most popular he ever was in the New 52 when Jeff Johns and Ivan Reis relaunched the series, and that was the most popular that it ever was. It sold the most. It was really good, but even at that point, it wasn't like, hey, Aquaman's going to have his own little corner and his own kind of supporting cast. But that's actually what we have here. It's like they've tried to redeem Black Manta and make him an anti-hero, which I've talked ad nauseum about how I feel about that. It just doesn't work for me. And we've got Jackson Hyde, and we have Andy Curiello. She's a little baby. We're even bringing in Garth, and we're bringing in Tula. It's really like, hey, it's Aquaman and his squad, the Aquaman family. I'm sorry, Aquaman is just, he's not, I don't think that Aquaman as a character really demands enough attention to have all these characters in the book, right? There's only so much interest in Aquaman. And then when you bring in, 5, 6, 7 side characters, now you've taken that amount of attention and love for that people do have for Aquaman, and you spread it out amongst all these characters. So you kind of end up like you and I feel. As much as I'm a fan of Aquaman, I own an Aquaman shirt even, but I'm kind of shrugging my shoulders at this one because I don't feel like there's enough there in terms of character work to really make it compelling. I think Aquaman works best when it's like him and Mira, and that's it. Even bringing Jackson Hyde in, it sort of dilutes it, So it's just not really working for me, unfortunately. I agree with you as far as the story goes. There are some interesting twists, and there's some political machinations, which that's always an interesting side effect of an Aquaman story, because he was the king. They no longer have a monarchy. They're trying to get a democracy in place, but he's still, the kind of the face of Aquaman as far as the surface world, or the face of Atlantis rather, as far as the surface world is concerned. So there's always going to be that political sort of stuff. But the problem with the story, in my mind, is it's plot driven rather than character driven. Like I can understand why Aquaman is worried. I don't think he ever actually even went to Mars. I think he said he was going to go to Mars, but really stayed on Earth and was hunting down the sleeper agents, like Rocky said. So, and I can understand why, this Atlantean sleeper agent project would get under his skin, and he feels responsible for all the destruction and lives that are lost. I can completely understand that like on a cerebral level. But there hasn't been anything that's happened in the series to really bring it home on an emotional level. Like logically, I can understand why he cares and why he wants to stop it, but it doesn't really seem like he cares. Emotionally, I haven't had a story beat where yeah, Aquaman feels really bad that this is happening. It's just like he feels responsible because that's who he is, and so he's trying to solve the problem. But it all comes across as sort of paint by the numbers, very plot driven, like I said. So it's unfortunate. Honestly, I think I don't know if it's leftovers of the 5G stuff with Jackson Hyde wanting to be Aquaman. If you want Jackson Hyde to be Aquaman, then fine. Take Arthur off the table completely again, which we just had that before the Kelly Sue DeConnick run. So I wouldn't really be a fan of that. Like really, what I want is just give me a plain old Aquaman title with Arthur Curry. That's when it seems to work best. Although I will admit, in the Peter David run, there were some supporting characters, Dolphin and some others that I guess it was a little more than just Aquaman himself, and that was a pretty popular run. But again, when it was at its most popular was when Jeff Johns was writing it. Maybe it was just because it was Jeff Johns, but that was very much a solo title with Mira showing up once in a while. So yeah, it's and we know it's been. I heard canceled, but I don't think it was ever really planned to be an ongoing. I think it was planned to end before Dark Crisis anyway. So we'll see what happens with Dark Crisis and how that affects Aquaman. That may dictate, what the next Aquaman series looks like. Okay, up next, Batman Fortress #1. Rocky mentioned it earlier. It's written by Gary Whitta. The art is by Derek Robertson, colors by Diego Rodriguez, lettering by Simon Boland. Gary Whitta comes from the kind of the television or animation school. I think he's a TV writer more than animation. And Rocky alluded to a fascinating premise. So this whole idea that Superman is nowhere to be found, and in this first issue, there's a worldwide blackout, and Batman and Alfred in the Batcave detect with their battleites, what Alfred wants to call them. Bruce refuses. They're satellites, but apparently Bruce has these deep space satellites to as like an early warning system. And yeah, something's headed toward Earth, and as kind of a first prelude to attack, I guess you'd say, it's sending out some sort of electromagnetic radiation that's causing blackout, so they can't prepare. So this is a cosmic level threat, a really big threat to the planet, and normally something that Superman would be right there at the forefront, but for whatever reason he's missing. So Bruce has to take it upon himself. What does he do? How's he going to stop this alien invasion? Obviously he's going to have help from some other Justice Leaguers, but not Superman, and that makes it a really interesting premise. The Derek Robertson art is fantastic. I'm a big fan of Derek Robertson. If any of you guys have read any of The Boys, maybe you're fans of the TV show. Derek Robertson's most well known for doing that. He also earlier last year did the Black Label John Constantine book that Tom Taylor wrote. Art was fantastic there as well. So this was, yeah, I mean, when I read the premise, I'm like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And I'm right there along with Rocky, like, oh my God, so much Batman, so much Batman. But Gary Whitta and Derek Robertson do a fantastic job of giving us just enough Bruce, giving us just enough Batman, and mixing that with this threat to make it really compelling. So I was impressed by this. It might be my favorite book of the week, actually. Like I thought it was really, really well done. And it's sort of a setup issue. It's sort of establishing what's going on. Bruce hasn't come out and said, hey, it's an alien threat. It's an alien invasion yet. But again, from the solicits for issue 1 or the entire series, we know what's going on. So I thought it was really great. And the other thing that it does, this series does very, very well, it shows why we need Alfred. We need Alfred back in the DCU. He's such a great sounding board and assistant for Bruce, and a great way to give us expositionally information that we need, right? As Bruce and Alfred are talking, they're conveying information to each other, and we as the readers are like, oh, this is what's going on. So it works really well on that level also. So yeah, I thought it was fantastic. Can't say anything bad about the art. Derek Robertson, he uses a little bit of a thicker line than I might normally ask for, because I do like pretty fine lines, but his storytelling and his panel layouts more than make up for that. So I'm always a fan of his art. So sounds like you enjoyed it too, Rocky. What did you think?
Uh, yeah, I did. I one of the central conceits of the issue and of the storyline is that it's Batman alone. And what I really like about the opening issue is that Batman, at more than one point in this opening issue, this issue starts off with with Wayne Manor being burglarized. And of course, can you think of a worse place if you're a burglar to rob than Wayne Manor? And of course, they run into Bruce Wayne, and of course, I mean, Alfred alone could take him out because of his old MI5 training. But it was a great way to start the issue off because it starts off, there's a blackout. This leads to more crime. The blackout is worldwide, but during this blackout, a great way to start the story off is that Wayne Manor is burglarized, and Batman right away knows that this is something that's happening around the world, and so he's having Alfred prepare getting the League together. You know, we don't know where Superman is, but get the other members of the League together. And meanwhile, Batman goes out because he finds out from Commissioner Gordon at Arkham Asylum that the people escape from Arkham, and so he's got to go and he's got to take out the Penguin and the Joker, and that takes place in the issue, and it's very action packed. And what I really like about it is that he talks about, you get a sense that this is a worldwide phenomenon, that this is a world where Batman lives with other superheroes, and he needs to get the other heroes together. But I love the fact that we don't, not even once, we don't see a single other DC superhero. We don't see any member of the Justice League. We don't see Superman. This is truly setting up the premise in this opening issue that this is Batman alone. Batman has yet to figure out that he might have to take out these aliens just himself. I'm getting a sense it's not just Superman that's not around. It's just going to be Batman. There might not be any members of the Justice League that are going to help him. So I'm kind of curious to see, is it just Superman that's off the playing field, or is it more than Superman? It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. But I really felt the stakes here. I felt that this was Bruce Wayne, Batman, and I love it. I love it. I mean, Bruce Wayne, he's the most dangerous man alive. And if we're going to be invaded by aliens and we have no superheroes, well, give us Bruce Wayne, who's Batman. And that's why I enjoyed this so much. I agree with you. This was definitely a pleasant surprise. And I'm curious about the name, Batman Fortress. I'm curious what the fortress refers to. Does the fortress refer to the Batcave? Does the fortress refer to Superman's Fortress of Solitude that Batman? If Batman's, what does fortress relate to? I mean, I don't know, but I find it fascinating. This new writer, Gary Whitta, has he written anything else that we would be familiar with? I think he's new to me, or is he?
Yeah, like I think he's worked on, like I said, on TV stuff before.
Oh, okay, so is it?
But I want to say he's done some comic work before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's English. He's an English screenwriter. It says here, author, game designer. He has done some comic work before.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's worked with Mike Mignola.
Okay. Did some Hellboy
And
maybe?
yeah, he's writing the comic Oliver, which came out from Image. So yeah, he's done a little bit of comic work, but it sounds like he's branching out,
Yeah, that's good.
doing more
Well,
comic work.
he's impressive, and Derek Robertson. What can I say? I mean, his art. I love his art. I love it on the boys. I certainly love it here. And Diego Rodriguez on the colors. I think it works. So I'm definitely in for this series. I don't know how many issues this is. Do you know? 6 issues? 4? 8? Does it?
I don't. I don't think they've said. Yeah, I'm not sure. But
Hmm.
as far as them calling it Batman Fortress, like what that might mean, uh, if I had to guess, it's alien invasion time. Batman has a plan for everything, so he could have a plan to turn the Earth into a fortress to try to repel the invasion.
Mhm.
That's the code name for his his defense, as
Yeah.
it were. That's my guess that'll be.
Yeah. Leave it to Batman to have a protocol for an alien
Yeah,
invasion. Is-
yeah, exactly. But that's again pure speculation on my point. So But yeah, great first issue. Definitely recommend picking it up. Up next, we have DC versus Vampires Hunter #1. This is from writer Matthew Rosenberg, who's also writing the regular DC versus Vampires story with James Tynion. The art in this issue is by Neil Gouge. Colors are by Antonio Fabella. Letters by Troy Petrie. It does have a variant cover that's an homage to Robin #1, like when Robin got his ongoing with Tim Drake. So I definitely had to pick up that cover because it's quintessential 90s. As far as the story goes, so it's interesting. We just found out in the last issue of DC versus Vampires, the limited series, that Nightwing, which was a big surprise. Kudos to those guys for, giving us a surprise. Like, everybody thinks of Dick Grayson as like the best of the heroes in the DC universe and something to aspire to, and he's this inspirational character more so than anybody else. He really does. Like, if Wally West embodies the hope of the DC universe, you'd say Dick Grayson embodies the heroism. So big hill turn to have him be the one who's pulling the strings, king of the vampires and what have you. So I'm not quite sure. Like, obviously the DC vampire versus vampire story is a little bit out of continuity. I don't know why they don't just put a black label thing on there, but it's got to be out of continuity. But you kind of, at least I thought, by the end of the DC Vampires series that the good guys would win the day. Well, this is like we're jumping forward a number of years, and it even says the fallen city known as Gotham, seat of power of the vampire kingdom. So we're jumping ahead years after what I assume would be the end of that DC versus vampires story. And so this sort of feels like a what if. Like, okay, what if the heroes lose and the vampires do sort of take over? So I don't know. I just don't know where it fits in the continuity. Or maybe, it's kind of like the same thing with Deceased. We're getting one more Deceased series, and supposedly it's the end of the Deceased story that Tom Taylor always had in mind. But again, there's no black label on it, so all this stuff's supposed to matter and supposed to count. But I don't know how you reconcile everything that's gone on with Deceased. I don't know how you reconcile everything that's gone on with DC versus Vampires. So I don't know. This felt a little predictable to me. Damian has been turned into a vampire, but he's still on the side of good because Dick Grayson's killed Bruce Wayne, and so he, excuse me, he manages to stay on the side of good, even though he's a vampire, and he goes up against Dick, and obviously there's a lot of history there. Alfred's alive in this one as well, so it's sort of all over the place from a continuity standpoint, and it just kept pulling me out of the story because I just don't know where this fits in, and maybe you're not supposed to care, right? I mean, that's sort of the impression I get. Like, just read it for what it is, and when I do that, if I set aside all my misgivings and questions about continuity and where does it fit or whatever, it's an okay story. Again, I think the downfall of it is just super predictable. And usually with Matthew Rosenberg, I don't find his storytelling to be that predictable. Certainly in Task Force Z, in his Grifter storyline that we talked about, I didn't find any of that to be predictable. But this felt very paint by the numbers. And even the humor that Rosenberg usually imbues in his stories, it didn't land for me here. So I don't know. I've been enjoying the DC versus Vampires story up till now, but for me, this was a bit of a miss. It wasn't really that exciting. It didn't really give me anything new that I was expecting. It certainly seems like a flash forward to a possible future after the current DC versus Vampires story ends. So, I don't know. Like, why release this now? Why not wait till the DC versus Vampires limited series is over, and then put this out? A week or two after that. I don't know. It just felt a little weird and a little wonky because I don't know where it fits, and don't know that it fits anywhere. Like, setting aside the continuity, just like tone wise, it was a bit predictable. So I thought the art from Neil Gouge was pretty strong, though. Really interesting storytelling techniques that he gives us. One of the pages where Damian's like falling down these stairs was done really, really well. Really helped to sell the sense of movement and whatnot. So yeah, the line work and the colors I thought were really, really great, but the story itself just kind of meh What did you think?
Well, I think I got a sense of maybe where it fits. My understanding is that when DC Vampires, the main series, returns, that there is a time jump, and that this takes place in between, but maybe at
Mm,
this, and so and so.
possible.
I think what this does, this issue, this really helps solidify what I think is the central core character basis and the character foundation of the DC versus Vampire series, and that is the relationship between Dick Grayson, who is the king of the vampires, and Damian, his relationship to Damian and the Bat family and Alfred. Because here, I mean, basically, Damian is essentially undercover. Damian was turned and he became a vampire, but he's living off cow's blood. It's a little tropey, but he ultimately pretends to be working for uh, he pretends to be working for the vampires under the vampire Black Mask, who reports to Dick Grayson. But you only get to see the king of the vampires if you perform or if you earn the right to see him. And in order to do that, you've got to bring in some heroes in alive. And of course, Damien does that by, with the help of Martian Manhunter impersonating Alfred. He infiltrates and finally gets to meet Dick Grayson again to attempt to kill him. But Dick Grayson doesn't want to. So this is, I think, if I didn't know better, I think this is Matthew Rosenberg trying to pull off his best Tom Taylor impression for character moments, trying to create some character moments between Damien and Dick Grayson at a time you couldn't imagine a worse time to do so when they're vampires. But Dick Grayson doesn't want to kill Alfred. He doesn't want to kill Damien. Dick Grayson here, even though he's a vampire, he wants to keep Damien alive because Damien has somehow managed, despite becoming a vampire, has managed to hold on to his compassion, his ability to still embrace some righteousness in some way and some morality, which is definitely unique amongst all the vampires. That's something that Damien is somehow managed to pull off, which is interesting because in the mainstream DC universe, Damien is sort of destined to become the Batman 666 of the future. And so there's at least one alternate future where Batman or where Damien doesn't need to become a vampire. He becomes a villain naturally. So I find that sort of an interesting take here by Matthew Rosenberg, that Damien can maintain some sense of morality. Damien is in effect a de facto kind of like the DC equivalent of Blade. But anyways, I thought I enjoyed the character work. It was we get so much character work with the Bat family members that it feels like I probably didn't need it. But I think within the continuity of the DC versus vampires, the importance of Damien as a figure, and I think that relationship between Damien and Dick Grayson and Alfred, I think that might form the emotional core of the series moving forward, if I was to venture a guess. But I didn't mind it. It was all right.
Yeah, it was all right. I mean, I'm curious to see it if you're right, and when DC versus Vampires, the regular mini comes back, if it is after this time jump, then I think it works to give us context to have this standalone on its own. Um, but man, again, I like throw a black label symbol on there. Like let's know for sure it's out of like you have it. Why aren't you using it? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, more Batman because it's always Batman. Batman Beyond the White Knight, Book 3, script, art, and covers by Sean Murphy. Dave Stewart handles the colors, and World Design handles the letters. Um, Man, this Bruce Wayne with the Joker in his head makes for some fun moments. What do you think of this one?
I like this. This Sean Gordon Murphy continues to impress. This series, I like this a lot better than the second volume on Batman: The White Knight. Uh, the idea that Bruce Wayne. The idea that Bruce Wayne and Harley Quinn got married because so that way Harley Quinn couldn't testify against them because of spousal immunity is an interesting premise. And of course, it hides the fact that these two love each other. Harley Quinn and Bruce Wayne are in love with each other, and it's basically, this reminds me a little bit of Moonlighting, except it's not really all that. It's not as funny, but it's clear that what I think a lot of us were sort of like we're Batman and Harley Quinn shipping, I think, leading up to this. And so it's nice to see that clearly Bruce Wayne is struggling with his affections for Harley Quinn. And isn't it interesting that in the initial series, Jack Napier talk to his Joker self all the time. And then here we have in this third volume, Bruce Wayne talking to, just like the Joker talked, Jack Napier talked to himself. Now we have Bruce Wayne talking to the Joker as well. So it's kind of funny, you know, like perhaps the Joker and Bruce Wayne have more in common. Jack Napier and Bruce Wayne have more in common than they ever realized. But uh, there's a lot of fun to be had here. While Jack is talking with Bruce and Bruce is hallucinating his conversation with Jack Napier, Jackie, the, Harley Quinn's two children, Jackie and Bryce, Jackie sort of escapes. She sort of runs away, and Bruce Wayne, you know, he puts on an old suit. He puts on another bat suit because he needs to find that somebody took the Batman Beyond suit. Terry McGinnis stole the Batman Beyond suit, and Bruce Wayne wants to find the suit, and also he wants to find where Jackie ran off to. And Terry McGinnis, there's another player who's convinced the Batman Beyond that Bruce Wayne is responsible for killing his father, Warren McGinnis. And so ultimately, when Batman Beyond ends up facing off against Bruce Wayne at the end of this issue, Bruce Wayne likely could have been more badly injured, except for the intervention of Duke Thomas, who was given an updated Robin suit from Barbara Gordon, who as a police commissioner, she wants Duke to resign from the Gotham PD and to try to take down help Bruce Wayne take down the corrupt GTO. So I really like how Sean Gordon Murphy has weaving all these plot points. And it's really fun. It's really interesting. The art's fantastic, of course. I love the art. I think it's the dialogue is great. I can't believe I'm not quite clear. Maybe I'm not quite clear why Bruce Wayne is hallucinating talking to Jack Napier of all things. I'm not sure if that's, I don't know. That seems out of the blue, and yet oddly enough, it works. I actually enjoy it, and I love all the players here, man. I love the Murphyverse, man. Give this guy, expand the Murphyverse. Give him his own planet. We got 52 Earths in the multiverse at a minimum. I mean, give him a planet. Call it Earth M or whatever, or that's Milestone. Call it Earth Murphy or whatever you want to call it, but give this guy his own Earth. This is a lot of fun. What'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think basically they have. I mean, based on the success of that first Batman White Knight series, I mean, there hasn't not been either a Batman White Knight, you know, book coming out set in this version of the DCU, or there's either one actively coming out or it's announced that it's being worked on. So, yeah, I think it works on a lot of levels. I agree with you. The whole Jack Napier thing, he's much more interesting to me as a character when he's not the crazy psychopathic Joker. I think it was explained in issue 2 that somehow Napier had set it up that he had a chip implanted in Bruce's head, and that's why he sees him. But I don't quote me on that because I might be misremembering. But it's something along it's something along those lines. What I will say, just to nitpick though, is, man, this is not something that you can just pick up and read. Unless you have a good familiarity with Batman and his supporting cast in the DCU, or you've read all of the Sean Gordon Murphy verse. This isn't really new reader friendly, but you know, that could be said for a lot of comics. So I think it works. I think the art is dynamic, and the fact that Sean gets to, you know, narrate the story from, you know, a writer perspective just makes his art that much better because he's writing to his own strengths as an artist. So I give him kudos for that as well.
Yeah, and I should say that there's also we learn more about Derek Powers. We learn about his real name. We learn about his connections, his connections with Victor Fries, and how he was actually the individual who's responsible for building a lot of the Batmobiles for Batman. And he had sort of an arrangement that he sort of blackmailed Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne at one point wanted to fire him because he wanted to make weapons and sell to the military. Because Derek knew that Bruce Wayne was Batman, he figured it out because he was almost like the Lucius Fox of the Murphyverse, and so he sort of used that to sort of blackmail Bruce Wayne, so that he was the guy building all the Batmobiles, and that's how Wayne Powers became, or Powers, the Wayne Powers industry was ultimately became formed. That those are the formations of that early on. So it's a really kudos to Sean Gordon Murphy for really building a really fascinating and interesting new history to Batman and his mythology. It's very well done.
Yeah, sometimes inadvertently, like I don't know if everybody read the essay that was in the last issue when he talked about why Jason Todd came first as Robin. It actually came from a mistake that he made, but anyway, it makes for interesting reading, and we've had so many Batman stories, so to have something that's a little different off the beaten path, definitely a good thing. Okay, up next we have Action Comics number 1043. This is from writer Philip Kennedy Johnson. The art in the main stories by Riccardo Federici and Will Conrad. Colors by Lee Luffridge. Letters by Dave Sharp. Then we have a backup feature also written by PKJ. The art in the backup is by Will Conrad. Colors by Lee Luffridge. Letters by Dave Sharp. So the background story, there's really not much to tell. It is colored well. I'll say that right off the bat, Lee Luffridge, because it's a lot of green, and it could come across as monotone and muddy, and it doesn't. It's actually pretty solid coloring. The art by Will Conrad is also very, very good. It's called Myth of the Mongol, and it's basically the origin of Mongol. And we know there's been more than one, and the son basically replaces the father at some point when the son becomes strong enough or cunning enough to murder the father. So that's for anybody who doesn't know the story of Mongol. I'm surprised they didn't put it in there sooner, based on the fact that this War World story has been going on for a long time. But it's really helpful, and it provides great context. As far as the main story goes, man, it felt like a really long issue for some reason, and a lot happens. It's very fast paced, and it does tie in quite well to the backup story as well. Once we learn that Mongols got more ambitions than just, hey, I'm gonna rule war world and make people fight against each other. He's got bigger plans than that, plans to obtain godlike power, basically by finding some. I almost want to call them gems. It really reminded me of the Infinity Gems at the end of the day, but these fragments of the old gods that were scattered across the universe, that whoever wields them will have really remarkable power. So it's like, yeah, this feels a little familiar, feels a little Marvel-esque, feels a little Infinity Gems. And I'm sure if there's any Marvel fans that read that's what they'll think as well. But in terms of Superman standing up for the little guy, it's a bit predictable at the end of the day, and that's kind of what we learn when you start talking about the myths, and even Superman goes to part of the necropolis where all these stories have been carved into rock, centuries and centuries ago, and they're all prophetic, right? So either history's repeating itself, or time travel's involved, or what have you. But it's clear that Superman is definitely the one that's inspiring, and the one that needs to be there to lead these slaves to their ultimate freedom. But I would be lying if I didn't say I feel like it's starting to drag a little bit. I wasn't the biggest fan of this idea anyway, because as I've said before, I'm a huge fan of the Roger Stern Superman Exile in Space story, and this just feels a little bit derivative of that, and not done quite as well or tightly. So I'm definitely ready for this to come to a conclusion. I hope this is the final arc. I thought we were heading toward the end, but I guess we have at least a few more issues to go. What do you think, Rocky?
I well, unlike you, we both share that. We both agree that this is a good story. I think it's just a little better than how you think. I think this is on par with the original John Byrne story, which I love. I think this is just raises the stakes a little bit. I love this. I actually even like the idea that Warworld is a one of the characters in the story described Warworld as a puzzle box to be solved, and if you solve it, you become and you are worthy. You basically become you obtain the seven god aspects of the mighty Algrim, the original god of the universe. And each one of these seven god aspects, again, it is akin to, you could compare it to the Infinity Stones or of the Marvel universe, but it doesn't, in my view, it doesn't feel like an absolute, it doesn't feel like a complete copycat. I mean, it feels like it's unique. It is unique unto itself, and insofar as each one of these stones does have a different sort of emotion that it seems to encompass. And there are, heck, yeah, of course there are some of these. There are similarities to the Infinity Stone, but it's unique. Frankly, it's such a cool concept. I don't mind that it's copied a little bit, because frankly, I think we need more of that in the DC universe. There's nothing wrong with imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and when you got an awesome concept like the Infinity Stones, DC deserves to have that. And if we're going to get that through these seven god aspects of the mighty Algrim god, and that war world itself is a mystery to be solved, a puzzle box where Mongol is looking to solve that mystery. He's looking to get his hands, and he wants to get all those god aspects unto himself. And he wants to, and if you're unworthy, you bring darkness and corruption to the universe, and if you're worthy, it's the opposite. And so already I can see where this is going. Uh, I think it's. I have a sneaking suspicion, of course, that in a battle between Mongol and Superman, Superman ultimately is going to obtain the seven god aspects, and he's going to reject them because he will refuse godhood, and Superman will reject the stones, will reject those god aspects, and they'll be shot out to the universe. And then we're going to get seven new characters in the DC universe moving forward that are going to encompass all these god aspects of Algrim in the future. So I actually like that. Right away, I'm making a prediction. I think I think it's fairly predictable to guess that's what will happen, because I can't see Superman. Superman's obviously worthy, but I can't see him, taking all these things unto himself. And obtaining some sort of godhood. That's not who Superman is. Superman has the power of a god, but at heart, he's got the heart of a man. And the irony is that even though he's worthy, I don't see him accepting these god aspects at the end of the day. But I really like the fact that all this rich mythology and war world. This to me is a more interesting war world than we originally got, even by John Byrne. But in any event, Ricardo Federici's art's fantastically low ridge on the colors, fantastic. I'm enjoying this. I can't wait till this is in hardcover form. I hope this is an oversized hardcover form. This entire story, this entire series, because I'm really enjoying this War World saga so far.
Yeah, I do want to point out, because I am enjoying it as well. But the initial Exile in Space was Roger Stern, set up by John Byrne, by what Byrne did with Superman going and actually killing people, killing Zod and what had the other Phantom Zone criminals in an alternate universe where the plasma Supergirl came from. And then Roger Stern took it over. That's when Byrne left the book. So, all right. Up next, we have Detective Comics number 1060. Main story by Mariko Tamaki and Nadia Shamus. Ivana Reis handles the pencils, Danny Mickey on inks, Brad Anderson colors, Ariana Mayer on letters, and then the backup, the Gotham Girl backup, which I'm really, really enjoying, is written by Sina Grace. The art in that is by David Lapham. Trish Mulvihill handles the colors, and Rob Lee on letters. What do you think of the main story?
Yeah, I like the main story. I'm a little intrigued by the development of Deb Donovan's daughter being I guess she's kind of a, what is she? Is she a detective?
No, she's the judge.
The judge, right,
Yeah.
right. And this idea that whoever this person is that's going around is causing people, blackmailing people so that they actually kill themselves in a fit of, because they're so afraid that they have to do something, or they're being threatened or blackmailed. Whatever force is causing people to do this must be a hell of a powerful force, because because uh, I'm telling you, by the end of this issue here, where they find themselves on a rooftop, and uh, I'm I don't know what's causing them. I found myself oddly enough confused by what was going on. I'm not really understanding uh, what could cause these people to do, like they're obviously to, I don't know. I mean, the level of blackmail that would be required to have somebody to literally kill someone else. It just seems very very odd to me. I'm not. Maybe I'm just missing something in the story, but it's not really hitting. I don't feel that I don't feel that writer Mariko Tamaki. I don't feel invested in the characters enough to feel that I should be feeling more for these characters that are having to do something like kill each other, or if I knew more what was causing them to do that, I'm just not really feeling it. It just feels very empty to me. Even though they're doing these serious things, it feels emotionally empty to me because I'm not really feeling a connection. Um, so I'm not pulled into this story. I'm not really pulled into this story. I like Deb Donovan as a character. I like the fact that she's working with Batman. I like that he's working with her, and I like that they're sort of they they're working together to try to figure things out. I'm I'm a little bit the Riddler here. I don't know, this Riddler. That is the Riddler as the radio host, is he, or is that not?
Yeah, it's the Riddler
Yes,
putting out his daily podcast with
because I don't know
some
how he's.
crazy mustache and mutton chops. Yeah.
So why isn't Batman looking for him? He's a wanted fugitive, and how can he overcome the airwaves? I'm not really understanding that. Why is he wearing? Why is he? I don't know. He looks different than he normally does too. Maybe it's because I'm getting so much. We're getting a lot of Riddler lately too. Uh, I just feel I'm not sure how all these dots are connected. With between the Riddler is the Riddler. But does the Riddler know who's blackmailing all this? Is the Riddler behind all this? I'm not really sure. Maybe when it's going to be all revealed. I wish we had more seeds planted to give us clues. Or, in fairness, if the clues have been planted, I've missed them. But I feel like I've missed an issue, and I know I haven't. So, um, the art's fantastic. I really like the art. But honestly, I don't really. This isn't really resonating with me. This storyline, I don't really feel invested in what the central solution or central revelation to the mystery will be. I don't know did you get more out of it?
Yes and no. I mean, the Yvonne Reese art obviously is outstanding. I mean, anytime that guy draws anything, I'm on board with it. I don't care what it is. It's. I mean, his art's amazing. But I get what you're saying. It's like, yeah, we know these people are, the whole idea of these citizen criminals, these average Joe citizens who are committing these horrific acts, including Deb Donovan's daughter, who planted the bomb in her own judge's chambers. Um, yeah, like what could cause them to do these horrific, commit these horrific crimes? Obviously, they're brainwashed in some way. The Riddler's the obvious, uh, you know, person behind it, and Batman has said as much, but hasn't really gone out looking for the Riddler. He's more trying to solve the mystery. But I agree with you. It's like it's hard to have a hook and to care about these people who are the quote unquote victims, but who are also the ones out there committing the crimes. It's hard to really care about them because we don't have any real emotional context. And I think this issue is supposed to give us some emotional context with the scene on the rooftop. We actually get the names of some of these people. One of them jumps off the rooftop to kill herself. She feels so bad for the things that she's done. And Batman ends up having to save her. Um, so, yeah, but it just feels a little clumsy. It's one of those things where maybe too much mystery is like too much of a good thing. Similar to the whole Red X thing. Sometimes it's okay to just tell the reader what's going on, even if the characters in the story don't know. You don't have to give us 100%, but you can give us a little bit. Like, is it the Riddler that's behind this, or is it not? If it's not the Riddler, you could give us some other figure in a silhouette that, don't have to give away who it is, but just give us a silhouette, give us, a little context so we know it's not the Riddler or what connection he has to the Riddler or what have you. I think that would give it a little more of a hook. Because yeah, right now we're so lost because, like Rocky said, there's not even any seeds. There's not even any hints here, and I don't think I've missed anything. But there's just not enough planted for us to have any idea who's really behind this. And if it's not the Riddler, then why is the Riddler doing a daily podcast where he's espousing these philosophical ideas about responsibility and whatnot while he's got a handlebar mustache and mutton chops that he's never had before? Rocky alluded to it. We've gotten a lot of Riddler lately. What is it about Batman villains where we can't just have a little bit of each villain, throughout the year? It's got to be Joker, 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 all a whole 10 years of nothing but Joker. And now, okay, it seems like they're backing off the Joker a little bit. Now it's like, okay, every story's got to be the Riddler. Batman has one of the best, if not the single best rogues gallery. You could make an argument for Spider-Man, but the argument could be made that Batman does. Like, he has such a rich history of villains. Like, why is it that we focus on only one of them at a time? Like, if we're doing Riddler in one book, then give us Mad Hatter, give us Black Mask, give us Maxie Zeus, give us the Penguin, give us Killer Croc. There's so many to choose from. Two-Face. But man, all we get lately is Riddler. It's kind of annoying. So, or even create a new one, or bring back Hush. I'm always a big fan of Hush. Or Lincoln March. We haven't seen Lincoln March in a long time. Or the Court of Owls.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
true.
again, so many, so many. All right. Anyway, up next, speaking of Two-Face, we have
Well, the backup.
real quick. The backup. I'm really enjoying the backup. It's the backup is doing exactly what the main story is not doing, in a way. There's a little bit of a mystery, or was a little bit of a mystery with who was posting these social media posts as Gotham Girl. We find out it's actually Gotham Girl's friend, who was Claire's friend, who supposedly committed suicide. Claire has her doubts about it, but he was doing so to kind of flush people out of the woodwork. Kind of flush them out into the open. People that disliked Gotham Girl and wanted to get back at her. So he was, in a roundabout way, trying to help her, even though he didn't go to her and say so. I think there was some romantic feelings there as well. But all those kind of emotional beats, the emotional hooks that we're not getting in the main story, we're getting a lot of that in the backup. So I give Cena Grace a lot of credit for that, because there is the mystery and we've gotten some more clues. And it shows kind of the weakness in that first story that Cena Grace, he's giving us, he's not just saying, okay, here's exactly what's happening. Here's the answers to the whole mystery, but he's giving it to us a little bit at a time. And it makes us feel engaged in the story. So I'm really enjoying it. And as far as storytelling goes, I mean, I think David Lapham's one of the greatest comic book narrative storytellers working today. So, you can't go wrong with him. Aesthetically, his style is not my favorite because it's not super dynamic, but I don't care because the storytelling is just so strong. Never once in a David Lapham comic do I ever have to go back to a previous panel and go, wait, what's going on between these two panels? Never happened. He's a fantastic storyteller. So I'm enjoying the backup. Probably my favorite Gotham Girl story we've ever gotten. So I'm really enjoying it. What do you think?
But it's interesting that the fact that her friend Andre might have been trying to warn her about who to go after, because she created this blog about wanting to go after corrupt criminals, corrupt officials, et cetera, and she thought maybe he was up to no good, but he ended up ultimately killing himself, and I don't know, maybe he was murdered, maybe somebody silenced him. He was trying to maybe warn her. We're not sure what it is, but for whatever reason, Gotham Girl ends up going after Chase Meridian, who Dr. Chase Meridian, and it ends. It looks as if she's violently attacks her at the end of this issue. But I'm wondering if this is all in Gotham Girl's head, because Gotham Girl herself has got some mental health issues, And so it's interesting here that, Encina Grace is playing with that mental health issues that Gotham Girl absolutely has. And so, and we know that Dr. Chase Meridian is actually is likely not a murderer because she's the new head of Arkham Asylum, appointed that way by Mayor Nagano. And so this is interesting. I'm you know definitely I'm interested to see where this goes. Who's Gotham Girl. She's got a very different look than she did when Tom King introduced her. I'm really curious to see where this goes. This has potential, and this is probably, I know Cena Grace has come under a lot of fire in some of the other things that he's written, but this has been so far I've been enjoying this, which surprises me a little bit because I wanted a more traditional interpretation of Gotham Girl, and this is not it. But I'm actually enjoying this. This is interesting, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, up next we have Task Force Z. This is from Matthew Rosenberg. Script: Jesus Moreno, Jack Herbert, and Vicente Cifuentes as artists. Adriana Lucas on colors. Rob Lee on letters. Art is fantastic. I'm a huge fan of all three of those guys. Cifuentes most likely is doing the inks over Jesus Moreno. I think Jack Herbert just does digital, so he's probably doing his own art. This is kind of an interesting issue because we don't really get much in terms of the task force. This is a very heavily Red Hood issue, Jason Todd issue. We know that they're out of Lazarus resin, and the only place they know to get any, so they can kind of reverse engineer it to keep the other members of Task Force Z alive that need it, is to go and steal the sample that Jason Todd gave to Batman way back in the beginning of the series when he first put him undercover. So he doesn't want Batman to know what he's doing, but when he goes into the Batcave right after Batman leaves, because he has the rest of Task Force Z set up a distraction across town, Jason Todd sneaks in and Barbara Gordon is there, and she immediately knows something's up. So it's a fun issue because even as all these other Bat family members show up and they all, in a way, they all talk down to Jason Todd. They're a little condescending, like, we know what you're up to. We're one step ahead of you. Turns out he was two steps ahead of them the whole time, including Batman himself. So, but he makes allowances for the fact that, he had to get Batman out of the way because had Batman been there, he probably wouldn't have been able to stay two steps ahead of him. So it's a fun issue. It really shows the contrast between members of the Bat family, Jason Todd versus Tim Drake, Jason Todd versus Dick Grayson, to a lesser extent, Jason Todd versus Cassandra Cain. He really is different than any of the other members of the Bat family. And so I appreciated that aspect of it. I really appreciated the art. Still don't know, if this is an ongoing, if this is a limited, but this is another one of those books that really shows that Matthew Rosenberg is very much at home in DCU. Like I love this book. And when it started, if you told me, and I think I even talked a little bit about it, like, man, we already have Suicide Squad. Why do we need this? Basically an undead Suicide Squad. And Jason Todd's leading them. Like, why is he leading a group of bad guys? And then we found out that the man behind it all was Two-Face, Harvey Dent, and you raised questions about that. God, how could this work? Matthew Rosenberg makes it work. He makes it work. He makes it compelling. He's fantastic, Matthew Rosenberg. Whether he's writing Grifter or Jason Todd, like these tangential Bat characters that are kind of on the outside looking in, he does a fantastic job. It makes me wonder what his take on Batman himself would be. Not that I want Chip Zdarsky to leave before he's even gotten started, but I'm curious. Like I wouldn't mind seeing Rosenberg follow Zdarsky, or follow Ram V's detective run. So I think Rosenberg has a really, I don't know. I mean, I know I've met Matthew a few times. I know he's a giant X-Men fan. I don't know how big of a Batman fan he is, but he sure knows how to write these Bat family characters really, really well. Very authentic voices. So big fan of this series. What do you think?
Yeah, I liked Matthew Rosenberg. He knows the Bat family. He's really good at dialogue between them. He knows their characters well. The way that they sort of like they joke around with each other, and yet they're very serious, and yet Jason Todd. My favorite scene is when he actually breaks Tim's nose and hits him with a crowbar, and does actually hits him pretty hard. Actually, I thought it was kind of cruel, but you know, when you can write Nightwing, Red Hood, Red Robin, and Cassandra Cain, Barbara Gordon, Batman, all in one issue, and it's basically Red Hood sort of taking them on a little bit of a wild goose chase there, and a little bit of misdirection. Very well done, and it pulls it off all in kind of a single issue. This is sort of like a done in one almost. That all you need to know is that Red Hood wants to obtain some Lazarus resin from the Batcave, and he manages to do it. But Nightwing knows he's up to what he's up to, and Barbara Gordon and the rest of the Bat family try to stop him. But Jason Todd manages to get one up on all of them because he knows the Bat family so well, precisely because he is a member of the family. And that's the one thing about being a member of the Bat family. My theory is that any member of the Bat family, if they plan to be deceptive to deceive the other members of the Bat family, they can do it because all of them know each other so well. And so the fact that Jason Todd could pull this off in such a way that he could get one up on his own family and not harm them, but he's willing to harm them as he tells Tim, much to Tim's chagrin, by having his nose broken. Again, just well done, and that's Matthew Rosenberg continues to impress. We really enjoyed his first initial work with DC with the Long Con, with introducing, bringing back Grifter and the Wildcats, and he continues to impress with this Task Force Zed. But yeah, no, definitely well done, and Herbert on the art, Lucas on Adriana Lucas on the colors. This series continues to impress.
Yeah, yeah, it really does. I wish I heard more people talking about it.
Yeah.
Okay, up next we have Harley Quinn. This is The Verdict Part 3 from writer Stephanie Phillips. Art by Riley Rosmo. Yvonne Placencia on colors. Letters by Ann World Design. What are your thoughts on this one?
Um, I thought this was actually predictable. I did actually have a theory on who the Verdict is. This character known as the Verdict that was taking out the new enemy, arch nemesis of Harley Quinn, and it ends up it is in fact who I thought it was. But that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy reading it. I thought Stephanie Phillips, I think, has done a fun job sort of weaving this tale. In this particular issue, uh, Batwoman actually breaks. Batwoman had previously broken Harley Quinn out of prison, and they're looking for the Verdict. And uh, Harley Quinn is basically kind of, well, I mean, she thinks she's going undercover, and she draws a bunch of makeup on her face. Harley Quinn is crazy and zany. If you've been reading Stephanie Phillips and Harley Quinn run so far, particularly the way Riley Rosmo, uh, his very stylistic form of illustrations, the way that he draws the characters, there's actually a unique kind of humor to it that if you've been along the ride so far, I think I can't help but to enjoy it. I've come this series has grown on me. Now, having said that, I think it lost its way a little bit in some of the earlier issues because of Fear State, but this is fun. I like the fact that Kevin's girlfriend Samantha Sam, she ends up being the one who ultimately ends up being ultimately injured in her trying to take out Harley, and she finds her way back to Kevin's apartment at the end. And the relationship between Kevin and Samantha has been, I think, reasonably well developed early on in the earlier issues. I think Stephanie Phillips has done a reasonably good job building up these sort of like a new kind of rogues gallery for Harley. and has done a good job developing characters, and particularly Kevin and this new girlfriend Samantha, who looks like she's the verdict. And even Batwoman in this issue, I mean, there's some craziness here, and there's some wonkiness, and I will say that Stephanie Phillips Harley is a different. She's much more kind of she's more cartoony in her sensibilities, and a little bit more wacky and crazy than the Harley that you would normally see in pages of Batman. And it that's why sometimes it seems out of it just seems out of sync, this reading Harley Quinn in the pages of her own comic, versus even with Teenie Howard last week with Catwoman. uh that seemed a little bit a slightly different kind of Harley there too. But Harley Quinn is always one of those things. She's like Wonder Woman. I mean, she's got people either focus on her craziness and she's insane, and then she's wacky and lovable, but then they can make her more serious when they need to. Here, this is Stephanie Phillips trying to pull out as much humor as she can, and just wackiness and fun, and trying to get hitting the emotional as many emotional points as she can with the supporting cast, Kevin, and this verdict and character. And what's the motivation of this verdict? It appears to be because maybe she's jealous of Harley and her relationship with Kevin. In any event, what I found particularly interesting here is Harley Quinn in this issue actually talks quite a bit about Ivy. And she talks about, even though Ivy doesn't even appear in this issue once, she talks about how Ivy helped her helped her work on herself. And for whatever reason, I don't think DC is letting Stephanie Phillips use Ivy in this series. And maybe it's because of the Poison Ivy series coming out. I don't know, but a large part of this issue was Harley Quinn reflecting on her relationship with Ivy and what she learned from her relationship with Ivy. And Ivy's not even in the comic. And that's what I found so interesting. Why not let Stephanie Phillips work with Ivy when she got to use Poison Ivy for those couple of issues? It was actually, I think, the better issues. So I'm a little bit frustrated that this issue, so much of it in the narration, in the thought balloons of Harley Quinn, she's reflecting on Ivy, and we don't have Ivy in the comic book. And that's frustrating. But we do get some character development. We got a significant revelation as to who Verdict is, and Riley Rosmo's art continues to be as stylistic as it ever is. And overall, it was, if you're in this, I enjoyed it. I'm curious to see where this is going, and I just wish we could get Ivy back in this series, because because she's never really been in it as much as she should be.
Yeah, I think 100%. It's editorial driven why Ivy's not in this book. I mean, I think if Stephanie Phillips had her way, Ivy would be in it. We got those few issues to explain why Ivy's not in it. She's out on the road discovering herself. And yeah, I 100% think it's because she has her own series coming. So will that fundamentally change who Ivy is? Will it ruin chances for Ivy and Harley to be together? I mean, I guess we'll have to wait and see. As far as this particular issue, I enjoyed it as well. I've talked a lot about not really being much of a Harley fan, and Stephanie Phillips really stresses the intelligence level of Harley, and that's what I like. She doesn't usually go zany, but she does in this issue because Batwoman gets to kind of play the straight man to Harley's nonsense. And I even though I typically don't like the zany, wacky Harley, I prefer her a little more cerebral. It works in this issue because you have, again, Batwoman playing that straight man to land all the jokes. So the humor works really, really well. And at the end of the day, there are a few comments from Harley here or there that remind us that she's, one of the smartest people in the DCU, certainly from a psychological standpoint. So I think that all works really, really well. As far as the art goes, yeah, I mean, what can I say? Riley Rosmo's art is an acquired taste. It's a taste I have acquired. He is a good choice to draw this book because it is so stylized and wacky. And there's a sweetness and an innocence to Harley when Stephanie Phillips writes her, and that comes through in the style that Riley Rosmo gives us here. So I continually say, Harley is one of those books I'm going to stop reading it because I'm just not that interested. But yet it shows up, and I read the first couple pages, and I always get sucked in. So kudos to the whole entire creative team because they're turning me into a Harley reader. Excuse me. Okay, up next we have Robin number 14, the aforementioned. This is part 7 of Shadow War, written by Joshua Williamson. Roger Cruz handles the pencils, Norm Rapman on inks, Luis Guerrero on colors, Troy Petrie on letters. It picks up right where the last issue left off with Batman and Robin in the ruins of that costume factory or tailor, whatever you want to call it, in Central City. And Batman goes to check in with Ghostmaker. He finds out all the members of the secret society have basically been, I hate to say they've escaped because they were under Ghostmaker's protection. They've left, basically. And Deathstroke has them, back directly working for him. And Batman is kind of considering, hey, what's going on? Maybe Deathstroke took them all and thinks he has a better place for them to hide. And Robin says, no, I know exactly where they went. Because remember, based on the death of Respawn, Deathstroke wants Talia's death more than ever. And so he's got his group of secret society of supervillains, and they're all taking the fight directly to the League of Shadows in Nepal. So that's the majority of this issue, with the different members of the secret society of supervillains fighting members, ninjas, demon ninjas, or whatever you want to call them, from the League of Shadows. And we have Deathstroke and Talia that are squaring off as well. And then, of course, Batman and some members of Batman Incorporated, along with Ghostmaker and Damian, crash the party, and they're trying to keep the peace, as it were, and make sure everybody makes it out alive. And once Damian finds out that Respawn has been killed, it's a really impactful moment from Joshua Williamson. He does a good job, and you can tell Damian's really hurt by it because he considered this clone to be a brother in a lot of ways. The fight between Talia and Deathstroke is brutal, and it's very well illustrated from Roger Cruz. I mean, just a fantastic, fantastic fight. And Talia actually wins. She actually wins the fight. She actually stabs Deathstroke, does enough damage that even his healing factor can't bring him back to life. And then we see the fake Deathstroke make his appearance, with Batman saying, hey, all along, this guy's been pulling the strings. He knew what would happen if Ra's al Ghul was killed. He knew it would cause Deathstroke and Talia to go to war with each other, and that's exactly what he wanted to happen. So if you're wondering, hey, who is it? Who would hate Deathstroke that much? Who would hate Talia that much? At the end, he stands revealed. Geo-force, the Prince of Markovia. Who else would have a grudge against these two horrible people, Deathstroke, Slade Wilson, and Talia al Ghul? Well, we know Deathstroke seduced and sort of almost in a way brainwashed Tara way back in the day, the Judas Contract, Teen Titans story. Not to mention how creepy it is in current context. Slade is like in his late 40s, mid 40s maybe, and she was like 13 or 14 at the time. Like really creepy, gross when you think about it. But yeah, she was killed. She betrayed the Titans and was killed. So of course, Brian Markov holds a grudge against him. And then as far as Talia al Ghul, well, she started Leviathan that Mark Shaw eventually took over. And whether or not you think it's a good story or not, and we don't, at the end of the day, Leviathan basically bought Markovia and then destroyed it, with all the battles and Leviathan eventually being vanquished and whatnot. So, yeah, Brian Markov's got animosity for these two like you wouldn't believe. Interesting that, it makes perfect sense, but interesting that Joshua Williamson, in a way, and we'll talk about it more when we get into the last couple issues, in a way he takes them beyond redemption, but it's not like anybody was really using Geo-force. Like I always liked him as a character, but he was sort of vanilla. There wasn't really anything that was that special about him, personality wise. But I don't know. It is a little bit of a cliche, right? Just like the taking, Harley Quinn and turning her into a hero, or taking Black Manta and turning him into a hero, like, or go over the other side of the street, Sandman or Venom, or any number of characters. And then there's the other cliche where it goes the other way. You take a hero and turn him bad. It's like, man, we've run out of story ideas for this hero. We'll turn him evil. We'll turn him bad. Turn him to the dark side. But I mean, at least it does make sense. That Brian Markov would go over to the side of devils based on the fact that, man, he really despises these two for what they've done to his family and his country. So yeah, all in all, a really strong issue, and satisfying to see the reveal of who we thought it was all along. So anyway, what do you think, Rob?
I liked it. I liked it. As I said, if there was one criticism, a constructive criticism, is that this was, I think, to anybody with a little bit of a DC background, we all saw this coming. It was obviously Geo-force. I mean, it couldn't be anybody else. The clues were there right from the beginning, and yet, and even Williamson at the end here on the final page, he indicates that it says Geo-force, WTF, like, what do you mean? Like, what the hell? Like, are you serious? Of course it's Geo-force. It really couldn't be anybody else. It makes the most sense. I think he's a great choice for, I consider him, to me, Geo-force is, what a great way to elevate him. I mean, first of all, I mean, if he's got any of the genes that his sister had, he's got a little bit of, he's got a little bit of villainy in him, and let him be an anti-hero. He's the leader of former leader of Markovia. Let him be a little bit kick-ass, a little bit. Let him be a little bit more hardcore. Let him be a little bit more of the. Let him actually be the Doctor Doom of the universe. He's a hell of a lot more interesting than Leviathan. That is goddamn sure. And so let's go with that. This is interesting. I love this development. Give Geo-force some gravitas, some agency again. He was a boring character on Batman and the Outsiders. I mean, Batman and the Outsiders is frankly a boring team makeup anyway. Actually, I thought it was better. Its last incarnation, I actually enjoy it much more. And I'm glad Geo-force wasn't really part of the team, to be honest with you. So this, make him a villain. And he's the leader of a country. He should be killing Deathstroke. I mean, who's going to prosecute him for killing Deathstroke? Who would prosecute him for taking Talia out? He'd be a hero of the United Nations, for God's sakes. I mean, if he plays his cards right and plays his diplomacy right and maybe doesn't go too crazy, like, unfortunately, maybe he is going crazy here. But I really like this development. I think it's very well done. And
Yeah, I think when I sit here and think about it, you make him a Submariner like character, right? Where,
yeah,
or Black Adam, where he's like, I'm not a good guy or a bad guy. I'm not going to look at myself or kind of judge myself by those terms anymore. I just want what's best for my country.
yeah.
And if that pisses people off, then whatever, fuck you.
Well, imagine if the same thing happened to Black Adam. Imagine if you went. In fact, it did at one time. It led to World War III. That Black Adam had ISIS taken out, and really, I mean, he is like a Black Adam. I mean, so it's going to be interesting if he has the same character arc that Black Adam did. I mean, he's got every right to seek some revenge, and I mean, this was arguably. I guess it maybe wasn't directly an act of. Well, I guess it was kind of an act of war, really. And now he's taken his country back. I mean, there's so many political machinations that can arise from this in a very interesting way. That's what I enjoy about this so much. And while this is going on with Geo-force now being revealed as the guy who wants to take out Talia and Deathstroke in a master stroke, we can't forget that we got this demon Nezha that is playing out in the pages of Mark Waid's World's Finest. That the demon will rise, but it's not necessarily Ra's al Ghul that will rise. It will be the demon Nezha. And if you want the origin of the demon Nezha, check out those first 3 issues of World's Finest that we reviewed and that are at your local comic book shop, guys. Because I think I really like what's going on here. I like that Williamson's working with Mark Waid, and that what we thought was just an old Mark Waid tale with Mark Waid entertaining us with his wild imagination, that actually this has consequence, that this is Mark Waid working with Williamson, that they actually have something planned, that this is actually going somewhere. I like that. Maybe the pieces don't neatly fit at this point, but I'm sure they will at some point. And so, I mean, Mark Waid knows how to work collaboratively, and he did it quite well in my view when he was over at Marvel on the Avengers titles, with the number of Avengers series. But I don't want to digress too much, but let's just say that I think this is a very good development. I'm happy with this, and I'm really excited moving forward to see where this takes us.
Yep, agreed 100%, which is why I couldn't wait and I had to go read the rest of Shadow War. Sorry, everybody. Don't want to rub in that we have preview copies, but we'll be talking about it. We'll be talking about the end of that soon enough. Speaking of ends, Teen Titans Academy number 15, the final issue, Commencement Part 2 from writer Tim Sheridan. Tom Derenick is the artist. Peter Pantazis and Matt Herms do the colors. Rob Lee on letters. Finally, we're being put out of our misery, Rocky. What'd you think of the final issue?
How nice of you to let me go first on this one. Good grief.
Your turn.
Well, it's
worked out for me.
Sure it is. Yeah. Okay. We'll go with that. Well, the title says it all. The legacy continues. And of course, it's totally misleading because the legacy doesn't continue. The legacy has ended here with Teen Titans Academy. I mean, do we want to see this again? Look, the nicest thing I can say about this ending issue is that we get Shazam in it. And he hints at us getting Mary Marvel to a Mary Marvel series. And I look forward to that. At the end of the day, Teen Titans Academy was an experiment that failed because it focused too much on Red X, a character that wasn't very interesting. And the characters that we could find interesting just weren't really developed as much as we would like. But they could be potentially interesting in the future in the hands of, dare I say, a different writer. But this issue called Commencement Part 2, I'm not... Right away, I find this confusing. We start off in the middle of an adventure where Shazam is... I don't know. I guess he's on Apocalypse. At first, I thought that he was in hell again, and that there was this door. I thought, is Shazam in hell again, and Neuron's going to show up? But no, apparently Shazam's being experimented upon by Desaad, and the Teen Titans. They rescue him, and so Billy Batson, he's so happy. The Billy side of Shazam is so happy that he's been rescued. Meanwhile, the Chukwukabra's buddy, his artist buddy there, is, I don't know, is happy drawing him as a superhero. So there's some nice character moments here. I want to at least end giving Tim Sheridan some credit here. There is some character moments here. At least Tim Sheridan, this might be the final issue, but he's still giving us some character work for these characters. And I don't think this was a terrible issue. I don't. This series has always lacked a certain amount of self-awareness in terms of how frustrating it is to actually read at times. But let's just say that I'm glad that we got Chupacabra sort of coming into his own. He's got he looks like a more cool version of Man-Bat, and there's some really nice art here. I mean, some of the art here is, it's pretty good. I mean, I got to give, I should give the credits here. Tom Derenick on the art was pretty good. And Herms on Pantazis on the coloring. But anyways, I'm glad it's over. One of the things that I really don't like at all, which I find extremely frustrating, is the fact that even though that Changeling and Cyborg are separated now, they're only separated because of a magic trick that Raven has done. They're still linked psychologically in their minds, but Raven pulled some sort of magic that to outside observers, they look like they're two separate beings, but they're really not. They're still linked. And why would you do that? it's of all the things that of it. I just think that's a really, really stupid idea. That it has dumb story potential. Who on earth would want to write a cyborg story now if you got to deal with changeling? Who would want to write a changeling story if you got to deal with cyborg? I mean, to me, it's like if you want to write that type of story, don't we have Firestorm? I mean, you know what I mean? I don't see. Uh, there's some aspects to this that I I'm just glad it's over. I'm glad it's over. And again, anybody in the DC universe, to parents in the DC universe, if you are sending your child to Teen Titans Academy, say goodbye to your child. There's at least a 1 in 10 chance they will be dead before the end of the first semester. Possibly burned alive, head chopped off, betrayed by their fellow students. There's bullying that goes on unchecked. The teachers are all superheroes battling supervillains all the time. They're irresponsible. They every this you're not allowed to know the names of your other students. You're not allowed, for all you know, your son or daughter going to this academy could have a roommate that's has superpowers that could be dangerous. You just don't know. Avoid this school like the plague. And if you're going to send your kid there, make sure you have insurance in place. You lawyer up because, anyways, uh, Charles, this is not Charles Xavier's School for Gifted Students. Let's put it that way. This is a liability to both in the real world DC universe and in for readership. Anyway, how did you feel about it?
Yeah, I can kind of sum it up and exactly what you said you didn't like about it. So, Cyborg and Changeling are sharing a body, and each of their distinct minds and personalities are in this body. It's a stupid idea. I agree with you. It doesn't work. So much so that nobody DC doesn't want anybody to have to deal with it, deal with what Tim Sheridan did. So they come up with this dumb idea, like you said, of saying, "Oh, Raven's going to cast an illusion so that from the outside looking in, it looks like they're two separate people." How the hell does that work? We even see like Raven at one point, she's going over and she's kissing on Garth and she's hugging him, whatever. So, like when you say illusion, you mean like holodeck, like from Star Trek,
I
where
don't know.
yeah, yeah, it's so this idea is so bad, you're going to undo it. But so if you're going to undo it, just undo it. But no, we might want to, like, I don't know, are you trying not to make Tim Sheridan feel bad, or you have plans for it later on? Well, maybe somebody can come up with a good idea for how to separate. It's just dumb. Just separate them. This was a dumb idea to put them together in the first place. Um, Again, like I think the failure of the series was Tim Sheridan had too many ideas. Comes from the world of animation where you can get a lot more story in kind of shorter periods of time. It's not live action, but it's storytelling that has movement on the screen, animated movement. You can get a lot more story. Same amount of script or whatever, a 20-page script for an animated feature, that's like 5 minutes. You know, well, this is your whole monthly comic, Tim. Like, too many ideas. He's not a bad writer, but I think he's a writer because he's relatively new and he comes from the world of animation. He needs a very strong editorial hand. A lot 90% of what he wrote, well, let's say 80% of what he wrote here should have ended up on the cutting room floor. Um, and that would have given us a tight, concise story, and it probably would have worked. Maybe even the idea of Cyborg and Changeling mashed together would have worked. But too many things, none of them fleshed out well enough, none of them explored well enough, ultimately led to the failure of the series in my mind. So, yeah, like we do need a Titan series, don't get me wrong, but it's not this. If you're going to give us Teen Titans Academy, then I shouldn't see Nightwing or Changeling or Cyborg or Raven or Star. No, just focus on the students. Give me that. Or if you don't want to do that, then don't give us a Teen Titans Academy book. Give us a regular Titans title. So it's like DC doesn't know what to do with it, because they created the young Teen Titans when Damian was leading them with Crush and Chupacabra and whoever else was in it. and then that was okay. And then, well, but we don't have a Titans title either. Let's just mash them all up. Let's just throw the old Titans, the new Titans, and some brand new characters together, even some characters from Gotham Academy. We'll just put them all in one book. No, like it doesn't work. It's too much. It's too much, and then you get a writer who is inexperienced with, the real estate, how much real estate to use on the page, and pacing and whatnot. And yeah, this was ended up being a pretty painful series to get through. Again, no disrespect to anybody involved. I know they did their best, but yeah, this was doomed from the start. Uh, just bad premise. Too many characters. This never could have worked. And then, like you said, half the plot, a third of the plot, is the Red X mystery that we had shoved down our throat. No, didn't work. Like that, if you had just focused on that, that was enough. That was enough for the whole series.
Yeah.
But yeah, didn't work. All right. Last book we're going to talk about is Swamp Thing number 13, Machination, from writer Ram V. Mike Perkins is the artist. Mike Spicer on colors. Aditya Bidikar on letters. Man, the art is so good in this book. It's like from the line work to the colors, it's just beautiful. Twist and turns from Ram V. At the end of this issue, Swamp Thing basically gets fired. Like there's so much that happens in this issue in only like 20, 22, 23 pages. Swamp Thing basically gets fired as the Avatar, and his brother, of all people, gets hired because there's a war coming. We've seen this factory. We've seen Jack Hawksmoor and this idea of progress, and this factory that is kind of running out of control, running amok, going up against the green. Well, now it's to the point where this idea of progress or technology or industry or whatever you want to call it, these machines are going to war with the green, right? So it's a whole new idea of another Avatar. We have the Rot.
It's the Parliament of Gears versus the Parliament of Trees.
Yeah, exactly. So we've had three basically colors before, right? Like we've had the green, which is nature. We've had the red, which is like blood, life, what have you, kind of similar to the green, but more humanized. And then you have the black, which is the Rot, and that's kind of been the cycle. And now we're introduced to this new parliament, the Parliament of Gears, or technology or what have you. And it's an interesting idea that Ram V introduces us to, this idea of, okay, what is this factory making? Why does this factory exist? The factory just exists in order to perpetuate itself. It doesn't matter what it produces as long as it consumes and produces whatever it is, right? So it's just this idea of technology sort of perpetuating itself, which is sort of very much the antithesis of what the green is, with the circle of life, and with the blood and the rot and everything. And so that's an interesting idea. So now this Parliament of Gears ready to go to war with the Parliament of Trees, and the Parliament of Trees doesn't feel that Levi Kamei is a strong enough soldier, basically. And so they fire him as the Avatar of Green and take his brother instead, who obviously is much more, what do they call it? His brother says war calls for an Avatar better suited to it. So obviously Levi is very distraught and disappointed in this, and he goes back home, and he's trying to figure out what his next step is when Green Lantern shows up and says, "Oh, Batman suggested I come and talk to you because there are these ships or some kind of structures or whatnot that are coming to Earth from deep space, and they look botanical in nature." And Levi Kamei says, "Yeah, they're here to fight a war. It's this war that's about to start." So, yeah, a lot happens in this issue, from Levi getting fired as the Avatar of the Green, of the Trees. We've got the whole idea, explanation of what the Parliament of Gears and this factory is, even though Swamp Thing and Jack Hawksmoor team up to sort of shut it down in the short term, the factory that was running under old Detroit. The bigger entity of the Parliament of Gears is ready to go to war. Plus, we have Trinity, which shows up, which I didn't even talk about, which takes up like the middle part of the issue, which is this being that sort of spontaneously appeared out in the desert, where a bunch of nuclear testing had taken place, and she's radioactive, and she has her own ideas um, of what humanity is and isn't, and she's very naive in a lot of ways, but also sort of vindictive in a lot of ways. So she's an interesting character. It's hard to believe how much story we got in um, in one issue. Like Ron V did a fantastic job of really pulling in a lot of different threads. You kind of wonder, man, if Teen Titans Academy had been written by Ron V, he might have been able to keep most of those plates spinning and would have made it a pretty interesting series, I think. But I don't know. His stuff tends to be really kind of dense, so I don't know that it would work in a teen setting. But
I'd love
anyway,
to see him try, though. I'd love to see him
oh
try.
yeah, 100%, 100% love to see him try. But again, this is just like Harley Quinn. I'm not a big fan, whatever. But Stephanie Phillips pulls me in. I'm not a big fan of Swamp Thing, but Rom V pulls me in, man. He pulls me in every time. This is such a high quality comic. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I love he continues. Ram V continues to build on the idea of the ideas, uh, and that is there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And but you know what? A really bad idea can lead to rot. It can lead to what underneath the city that Jack Hawksmoor has discovered is this factory, and these bad ideas have led to rot, and it's growing, and it's feeding in this parliament of gears, which is becoming very powerful. And Jack Hawksmoor is the king of cities, and so he can track. He knows that something is off. And this factory where this parliament of gears is becoming more powerful, powered by these crazy and bad ideas, uh, it's interesting. Again, it's so rich with metaphor. I mean, you can read in whatever you want to it. It's just riddled with it. The green has the power to swallow up a bad idea. In fact, Swamp Thing did that in an earlier issue where the green actually swallowed up an idea that was sort of the metaphor of the idea was an old World War II bomb in London that where it was fed and given life by these bad ideas, and the Swamp Thing sort of swallowed it up. The green defeated it, but it's the idea that I like how Ramvi is thinking. He's taking this technological age that humanity is as we're entering into exponentially, and it's creating a parliament of gears, and with that comes great power and a lot of great ideas, but also a lot of potentially corrupt ideas that technology can bring us. And it's sort of embodied by this Trinity character that represents the nuclear age, the atomic age, which was arguably a bad idea, but maybe has some good ideas as well in terms of energy and uh, limitless energy and what have you. But then we also get the downside of technology. And is this a good idea or a bad idea? And what's the difference between a good idea and a bad idea? Well, it's how you approach it. It's what you do with it. It's and then in the midst of all this, we have, as you said, Swamp Thing was fired. Levi Kamei was fired. His brother's taking over. But Levi, as Levi sort of goes off back to Jennifer, who he's now been intimate with, and they've sort of this issue started off with them being intimate with each other. Implied that they obviously told each other finally how they feel. There's an old Parliament of the former member of the one of the members of the Parliament of the Trees, who was the one who originally chose Levi to be the Swamp Thing. She says to him, "Look, you stick around because they're going to need you, and they're eventually going to realize that they made a mistake by not using you. And the reason why they made a mistake, Levi, is because you have the power to dream. You have the power to dream." And I just love that. I just love that. That the power to dream is what saves us all from a bad idea. And there's something wondrous and just so wonderfully philosophical, spiritual, and yet comic booky about what Ramvi is doing. And it's a comic book, and it's Swamp Thing, and it's awesome. And I just really love it. I love the metaphor here. There's so much that you can read into this, no matter what your proclivities are in terms of how you think spiritually, philosophically, or however you might think. What I love about Swamp Thing is that there's something in this for everyone, regardless of how we might approach the subject matter itself. And so, my highest praise.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's a fantastic series. So Anyway, that does it, everybody, for the DC books. Believe it or not, there's no collected editions this week. That's all the books that are coming out, with the exception of there is a second printing for Green Lantern number 12, which is, I guess, the first appearance of John Stewart as the Emerald Knight. It's got a cool looking character cover of John Stewart in his Emerald Knight costume, but yeah, that's it. So I probably have to give my favorite book, my favorite DC book. I probably have to give the nod to Batman Fortress, although they're just about all the books were real strong this week. Obviously, Teen Titans Academy probably the weakest. Aquaman probably down there as well, but everything else was really really solid. But yeah, Batman Fortress, it felt fresh, and that's saying something for a Batman title. So, what about you, Rocky? You had
Well,
to pick one.
it's a tie for me. The more the more I talked about Swamp Thing, the more it rose in my rankings in my head. I would have to say it's a tie between Swamp Thing and Batman Beyond White Knight number 3. Both very well done. Very well done. And honorary mention of Deathstroke and Robin, man. I think Shadow War. I'm enjoying it. I'm having a lot of fun with
Yeah.
it. So kudos to Joshua Williamson on both those.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So don't forget to check out our new Comic Wednesday episode. I know we missed last week, but we'll definitely. It's been really hard. So thanks to everybody for hanging in there while I've been traveling so much for the day job. And I hope everybody got a chance to check out my Superman Sunday episode this last Sunday, talking to longtime comic artist Ron Friends. He's the one who came up with the Superman Blue, the electric blue Superman costume. He was also the writer, or the artist rather, on Spider-Man when Spider-Man changed to a black costume. So, as well as along with Tom DeFalco creating a new Thor, a look for Thor, with the beard and the helmet and what have you. So, man, three, and we talked about it in our chat. Three iconic characters where when the costume changed, they got pushed back from a lot of the fans. So
Yeah.
really interesting, a lot of the things that Ron had to say. So what about you, Rocky? Anything else you have coming up or
Uh,
that just came out that you want to tease?
I don't think so. No, I'm going to be tied up all week again with trials and other things, and probably sneaking away and checking out the Johnny Depp Amber Heard drama because that's always good entertaining for in my neck of the woods. So, and just a quick shout out. You mentioned Thor. Just when we started this 2 hours ago, the Thor: Love and Thunder, the trailer dropped. The second trailer dropped for Thor: Love and Thunder. So I'm gonna definitely check that out and see if. Uh, Helmsworth was bragging that it apparently it's quite good. It's the best trailer yet, so that he's ever been involved with. So check it out.
All right, check it out, all you MCU fans. So don't forget, if you're listening to us on the audio only, head over to YouTube, look for Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom ! Subscribe, ring the notification bell, like this video. That way you know when new content comes out. Conversely, if you're checking us out on YouTube and you don't listen to the other audio content that comes out from the Comic Source, just go to your favorite podcasting app or platform on your smart device. Do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the interviews that we do or other content. So I promise you, Spawn Daily's coming back. As soon as I'm done traveling, we'll get back on a regular schedule, and we will get caught up. Probably means we'll be releasing double episodes for like a month, but we will get caught up. So again, we appreciate everybody's support and for you joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.